How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, O Israel? How can I make you like Admah? How can I treat you like Zeboim? My heart recoils within me. My compassion grows warm and tender. I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim, for I am God and no mortal, the Holy One, in your midst, and I will not come in wrath.
Hi, I'm Jacob.
Hi, I'm Nina.
Hi, I'm Mike.
And this is the Fig Tree Podcast.
Today we are turning to the book of Hosea, the first in a group of books called the Minor Prophets.
Now, they weren't called minor prophets because they were less important. In fact, some of the books, like Jonah and Amos, are some of the most famous of all the prophetic books.
The Minor Prophets are called minor because their books are short, but Hosea is actually the longest of the short ones, and so he gets to go first.
Some of them are just a couple of chapters long.
So, because all of these minor prophets are so short, we'll combine most of them into a few episodes, stopping to highlight some of the most famous ones like Jonah and Amos. So we're not going to go through every single minor prophet.
And one of those is Hosea.
Hosea.
Spelled like a C, like
Hosea.
the ocean.
Hosea.
Ooh, but before we turn to Hosea, why don't we check in? Jacob, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm pretty good. I'm excited. Next week, I am going to Camp Stevens as a chaplain. Camp Stevens is our diocesan camp, so we'll be hanging out with a bunch of youth and all the camp counselors and praying and doing services. It'll be a lot of fun.
It's so beautiful up there.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike? Father's Day's coming.
Yeah, Father's Day's coming. Don't work on Father's Day. I like that. Hang out with my daughters. And Wednesday and Thursday, I'm gone fishing. I got a new car.
Wow.
Yay! What'd you get, Mike?
I got a 2010 Toyota Camry with 20,000 miles on it.
And it looks pretty good. It's in really good shape. It's got the leather seats. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a 94-year-old lady.
What a blessing. What a blessing.
Awesome.
I'm excited for Father's Day because it's one of our son's first ones. And so we'll be there with him.
That's so awesome. That's awesome. So why don't we turn to Hosea?
So Hosea is simultaneously one of the most comforting and one of the most difficult of the prophetic books.
Yeah, it's not as weird as Daniel or Ezekiel, but like a lot of the Bible, it's got parts in it that reflect a time and culture that's very different from ours.
Do you remember when we were talking about Ezekiel and we talked about all the strange things God commanded him to do?
Like eating a scroll?
And laying on one side for more than 390 days and another for 40 days?
And cooking his food over poop or dung?
Yep, all those weird things. Well, in that episode, we saw that Ezekiel did these things to communicate a message from God to the people of Jerusalem.
Right, like how laying on his side was a message that punishment would last for 390 years for Israel and 40 years for Judah.
Hosea does some of those kinds of things, but instead of laying on his side or eating a scroll, God commands Hosea.
Go take for yourself a wife of whoredom, and have children of whoredom, for the land commits great whoredom by forsaking the Lord.
Ooh.
So it's kind of like Pretty Woman.
Not quite. God isn't commanding Hosea to marry a prostitute, which is a common misconception.
Right, he's commanding Hosea to marry a woman who is promiscuous. Like, it could be a prostitute, but it's probably just a woman who's committing adultery.
For whatever reason, right?
Yeah.
So Hosea ends up marrying a woman named Gomer. And together, Hosea and Gomer have 3 children.
And God tells Hosea to name the first Jezreel, which is the place where Jehu launched a bloody coup d'etat because God says he will punish the house of Jehu.
God then tells Hosea to name his second child, a daughter, Lo Ruhamah, which means not loved or not pitied, because God will no longer have pity on the house of Israel.
That is an unfortunate name.
But not like Goober or Gomer Pyle.
Yeah, I guess it could have been worse.
Yeah,
That's true.
Who here remembers Gomer Pyle?
In seminary, the seminary guys, they would always name their kids after these like dead theologians. And one of my classmates named his kid Athanasius,
No,
which is
wow.
crazy. Yeah, so
Or
it could be worse.
Athanasius.
I know.
I wonder what the nickname would be.
Ati. It was Ati,
Ati.
which is cute. That is pretty
Yeah,
cute.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not so bad, I guess.
Well, finally, Gomer gives birth to their third child, a son, and God tells Hosea to name him Lo Ami, which means not my people, because he says they are no longer his people.
But they don't have to lose hope, because then God says,
Yet the number of people of Israel shall be like the sand of the sea, which can be neither measured nor numbered. And in the place where it was said to them, You are not my people, it shall be said to them, Children of the living God.
After this marriage to Gomer and the children are introduced, chapter 2 tells the story of God and Israel, specifically Israel's infidelity against God, God's punishment, and Israel's redemption.
Now, many interpreters think this is implicitly telling the story of Hosea's relationship with Gomer, since that's meant to depict the relationship between God and Israel. This might be the case, but it's not completely clear from the text.
So the chapter begins with the husband's declaration of divorce to his wife who was in adultery, saying in a passage that is very uncomfortable for modern readers that the husband will strip and expose her and seemingly commit some kind of violence against her, perhaps even against her children.
And he accuses her of her transgressions.
Hosea reads, For their mother has played the whore. She who conceived them has acted shamefully. For she said, I will go after my lovers. They give me my bread and my water, my wool and my flax, my oil and my drink.
And the chapter tells of how she keeps going after her lovers, but won't realize that her abundance was actually provided by her husband and not her lovers. And she'll eventually realize that things were better, and she'll try to return.
So here, Baal is explicitly referenced. God is accusing Israel of seeking abundance through the worship of idols, all the while not realizing that all their abundance came from God.
So God will withdraw the abundance, and things will be bad for the people, and then they'll return.
But when they return, God does not respond with anger. Rather, he will take them back and make a new covenant with them. And he says,
And I will take you for my wife forever, and I will take you for my wife in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I will take you for my wife in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord.
And no longer is he going to reject them or refuse them pity.
And I will have pity on Lo Ruhamah, and I will say to Lo Ami, You are my people, and he shall say, You are my God.
So after this section, it seems that Gomer has left Hosea and ended up with someone else, though it doesn't say who. It is possible that she has ended up as some kind of slave or is in debt of some kind because God commands Hosea to buy his wife back for what would have been roughly the price of a slave at that time.
And he keeps her with him, instructing her not to return to adultery or to sleep with anyone, even Hosea, for a period of time, to represent how the Israelites will be deprived for a time of a king or prince, sacrifice or pillar, ephod or teraphim, which is an ancestor statue.
But afterwards the Israelites shall return and seek the Lord their God, David their king. They shall come in awe to the Lord and to his goodness in their latter days.
Whew. So that is a crazy, crazy passage, or bit, a section of passages. What do we do with this?
So it's sad that so much of it rests on the woman.
Right.
Right. Although
Yep.
the lesson is very clear. about what this prophet is saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is where we have to kind of compartmentalize and remember that this is a different time and place, and then we need to pull out the lessons from the passage, while also acknowledging the ways in which our culture is very different. And, some of these things I think we can just say were wrong at the time.
Well, clearly the women then were just trying to survive.
Right.
But that's not the point. The point is who she represents, right?
Exactly.
In this story,
Yes,
right?
yes, precisely.
And what the whole nation was doing.
Well, no, so the other thing is that it's very realistic, right? So God wants him to marry her because she's not perfect.
Yeah.
And just like God comes into a union with us because we're not perfect. And we come into this union with God because of his grace and his mercy, and he loves us no matter what. Whether we're good or we're bad, which it kind of says, whether she's good or bad, she's going to be my wife forever.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful, because that's all we really want, is to be loved no matter what.
Right. And the thing about God showing us mercy is that God knows our backstory. And I think if we knew the backstory of more people, we would be more merciful ourselves.
Yeah. What's one of the really fascinating parts of Hosea is that actually the very fact that he was commanded to marry a woman who was known to be promiscuous caused scandal and interpretation for centuries, because people thought, why would God tell him to do this? This seems like something God wouldn't do. He would want him to marry a pure woman, right? But he doesn't. And God doesn't want him to do that. And this is very interesting. I think it shows exactly what you just said, that our background doesn't matter to God.
Yes, also. The Israelites were not pure either.
Exactly.
So anyway.
Precisely, yes.
So those 3 chapters form the first section of the book of Isaiah, and they really set the tone and introduce all the themes for the rest of the book. For the next 11 chapters, we get Hosea's prophetic message to the people of Israel.
Now, the rest of the chapters don't follow a narrative structure like the first few. Rather, they're a collection of Hosea's prophecies.
Most of them are accusations.
Looming large in these chapters, however, are all the basic themes we already touched on.
Right. They're building on these first 3 chapters and this illustration between Hosea and Gomer. So instead of summarizing the chapters, I think that'd be kind of boring. What I think we should do instead is take a look at some of the major themes of the book, which will help us read the book as a whole and understand this whole Hosea-Gomer thing. So why don't we look at these themes?
Okay. The first theme, directly connected to the story of Hosea and Gomer, is this image of Israel is committing adultery against God.
More than once, God says to Hosea some variation of, "O Ephraim, you have played the whore. Israel is defiled."
God accuses Israel of chasing after other gods and worshiping idols to secure good crops and harvests.
Instead of trusting in God, they pray to idols, and God calls it adultery.
But the image isn't just about worshiping other gods. It's also about how Israel runs to other more powerful nations instead of worshiping God.
Ephraim has become like a dove, silly and without sense. They call upon Egypt. They go to Assyria.
Over and over again, this image is used to show Israel's lack of fidelity to their covenant with God and the ways in which they have failed to love God.
In fact, one of the faults that Hosea points out is their lack of love.
They do not cry to me from the heart, but they'll wail upon their beds. They gash themselves for grain and wine. They rebel against me.
So what do we think about this whole idea of sin and covenant breaking, all of this, as being compared to infidelity? This is one of the central images of Hosea, and I think it does actually have something helpful for us. But what do you think? What's going on with that?
I think the people are showing that they don't trust that things will get better.
Ooh, yeah. Right.
Well, and it's just human nature, right? God gives them this country. God gives them bread. God gives them meat. They always want more. They're going somewhere else when they don't get what God wants them what they want from God right then. They go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But God is always the faithful husband.
They're very fickle.
They're super fickle. And one of the interesting passages, I like what you said, Mother Nina, about basic necessities and trust, because one of the things in chapter 2, where it's describing the woman who's Israel, is that she goes after her lovers for things like flax and grain, oil. This isn't describing, gold and luxury. It's describing
Perfume.
basic necessities, right?
Yeah.
She's not trusting, and Israel's not trusting that their basic needs are going to get met. And so they're going off to try to find that. They're living in fear, pretty much. But I think there's something else that this helps with our idea of sin, about what it is.
So here it seems to be that sin is primarily relational. When we do things that are bad, we wound our relationships.
But we can do things that aren't inherently bad that can also wound our relationships. So that's why sin isn't just arbitrary morality. It's all about how it's associated with our relationship with God and other people. And so it's not just an issue of God like sitting up on a cloud weighing the cosmic scales, and if the good you've done outweighs the bad, then you're good, and if it doesn't, then you're not good. Because that's not how this all works with God. If sin is infidelity, it's relationship breaking. It has nothing to do with whether God has weighed up the good and bad. It's all about how we have treated our relationship with God.
It's true with God. It's true with everyone that we care for.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the more difficult parts of Hosea, though, is the whiplash we get going between these statements of God's intense anger and God's compassion.
Right. Over and over and over again, Hosea recounts God threatening to destroy Israel, to abandon them, and it gives these like super intense descriptions of his anger.
So I will become like a lion to them. Like a leopard, I will lurk beside the way. I will fall upon them like a bear robbed of her cubs. I will tear open the covering of their heart. There I will devour them like a lion. As a wild animal would mangle them, I will destroy you, O Israel. Who can help you?
Yikes.
Yikes. But then there are many points where God seems almost wistful and compassionate, talking about how much he loves Israel.
Yet it was I who taught Ephraim to walk. I took them up in my arms, but they did not know that I healed them. I led them with cords of human kindness, with bands of love. I was to them like those who lift infants to their cheeks. I bent down to them and fed them.
So one thing we didn't clarify earlier, when he says Ephraim, he means the northern kingdom, so Israel. So Ephraim, Israel, it means the same thing. But what's so interesting about these depictions that we just read is that they display God like he's almost unstable and double-minded. It oscillates between anger and mercy in this like really weird and confusing way.
But don't we all kind of feel like that when we feel like our relationships have been sinned against?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
Well, it's important to remember that almost all the statements of punishment are hypothetical and never happened in history. They record God's statement of feeling anger, not a record of his future actions. And we should remember that, as we have discussed before, God's judgment is almost always described ultimately as a kind of handing over, not an active inflicting of pain.
God lets us taste the consequence of our own actions.
Mm-hmm. So I think one thing that would be really helpful here is I was reading from one of the most famous Jewish authors of the last century, Abraham Heschel. Have you ever heard of Heschel?
For sure.
Yeah. So he wrote about this feeling of whiplash in Hosea. And he puts it this way. He says, "How deeply Hosea must have sensed the pathos of God to have been able to convey such dreadful words against his own people whom he loved so deeply. These words, however, were neither a final judgment nor an actual prediction. Their true intention was to impart the intensity of divine anger, and yet that anger did not express all that God felt about the people. Intense is his anger, but profound is his compassion." And so it describes the way in which there's a kind of pathos of God, a feeling of God, where it's the intensity of God's feeling and reaction then to the actions of Israel, more than it is God's actual, real actions. And I think that's interesting. So what do we do with this whole description of God's pathos? What does it do for our interpretation of Hosea?
Well, this shows how deeply God is in love with us and how deeply God is invested with us.
Right, because if you're in a relationship and somebody if there's infidelity, it does cause these deep feelings of betrayal and anger, even.
Right.
But those feelings show actually how much you love the person and why it causes such a reaction in you.
And we walk away, but does God?
Good. Yes. No. God doesn't walk away, which is pretty significant, I think.
Truly.
It's a lot like the story of the prodigal son.
Oh yeah. Okay, we're going to get there, so save that.
I'll save it.
So while this image of infidelity, then we've shown then how powerful it is, and we've shown God's kind of pathos. But I just want to address one thing, or talk about one thing. Is that one of the more troubling parts of Hosea, and we've mentioned this, is how it seems to portray women. Many of the interpretations of the book interpret Gomer as this one-dimensional and completely sinful character, and even worse, seem to portray God through Hosea as almost abusive and controlling, subjecting her to almost cruel punishments, putting in her in captivity to prevent her from leaving for her lovers. So what do we do with that?
So on one hand, we have to grapple with the reality that Hosea was written in a different time and place in a very patriarchal culture. Mm-hmm. So when we read Hosea, we have to interpret it with that in mind and finding the ways it speaks to our own time and place.
Right.
Some modern and especially feminist scholars have found ways that we might read Hosea in a manner that resists its own patriarchal context.
Oh, that's interesting. How does that work?
Well, some scholars engage in what's called prophetic reimagining of Hosea, and they've pointed out that the text, similar to how it displays God as almost double-minded, portrays the Hosea-Gomer and God-Israel relationship as having been reduced to a transactional, fundamentally broken relationship that has turned into a kind of power struggle. The state the relationship has been reduced to is as much a problem as the adultery and idolatry is.
Oh, interesting.
So when Hosea buys Gomer and when God speaks of punishing Israel, it displays the fundamental brokenness of the relationship and shows the need not for Gomer or Israel's broken submission, but rather the need for a new covenantal relationship.
Oh, right. So this is why in the midst of all the language of punishment, we find statements in Hosea that point to when God will establish a completely new covenant with the people of Israel. Well, we read one earlier in Hosea 2:19 and 20, where God talks about new vows that he's going to make to the people.
And I will take you for my wife forever, and I will take you for my wife in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I will take you for my wife in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord.
So Abraham Heschel, who we talked about earlier, he observes that Hosea depicts God, despite all of that dramatic tension between compassion and anger. He describes the core of the text as finally showing that God has a fundamental disposition of love.
How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I hand you over, O Israel? How can I make you like Admah? How can I treat you like Zeboim? My heart recoils within me. My compassion grows warm and tender. I will not execute my fierce anger. I will not again destroy Ephraim, for I am God, and no mortal, the Holy One in your midst, and I will not come in wrath.
Mm-hmm. So there's no wrath.
Wow. Well, on that day, says the Lord, you will call me my husband, and no longer will you call me my Baal. And I will take you for my wife forever. I will take you for my wife in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I will take you for my wife in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord.
So these parts are why that marriage metaphor really becomes beautiful, I think. God makes a covenant with his people that, yes, kind of broke down and it became adversarial even, but he'll never go back on his covenant. And no matter how much they break it, God will always remain faithful and will even create a new covenant. Every single time that Israel breaks the covenant, God just offers it again and again and again. So what do we think is the big takeaway from Hosea then?
Well, I can think of Matthew chapter 9. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners.
Right. He's quoting Hosea there. Jesus is. And as Christians, I think we should interpret Hosea alongside the very parable that Mike mentioned earlier.
Oh, the prodigal son.
So expand more on that for us, Mike. What do you think?
Well, I'd like to tell some stories.
Please tell some stories.
I remember being a little boy and getting really mad at Mom, and she would tell me, she would pack my stuff, and she goes, "You're getting out of here, don't you ever come back, And I would pack my stuff, and I would go out, and about 2 hours later, I'd be hungry and cold and tired, and she would be out there looking for me. Michael, come home, and I would come home, and she would love me like the prodigal son, and everything would be okay. And my brothers and sisters would be mad because they're in trouble. They're in their rooms because they didn't help look for me, and she would just love me no matter what, but she also told me that I could never come home, just kind of like God did, I'm done with you, don't ever come back. I mean, to the point where she helped me pack my bag, to try to teach me a lesson, which I learned, but she also learned as well, because she was just like, oh no, my poor little boy is out there in the cold, somebody might pick him up. Who knows?
Right. Yeah.
Sounds like she deeply loves you and is deeply invested in you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, in my younger years, blaming my parents for lots of things.
Yeah.
Right? And then I remember coming to God and changing my life and getting sober and writing all these things down and realizing that sometimes, yes, my parents were spiritually sick, but they loved me no matter what. And they would have done anything, and they did the absolute best they could with what they had and what they were taught, and they did get angry, and they did say things they didn't mean, but they always loved me no matter what. And they always put me first. There's not a woman on this whole planet that will ever love me as much as my mom did. But she drove me absolutely batty, and I did the same thing with her for years, until she was gone. And now it's, I miss her every single day, and she was the best mom ever.
It's a great story. Well, and it shows that unconditional love
Right.
where there's nothing you could do that will take away the love or break the relationship entirely. You can't do it. And that's one of the beautiful things about Hosea is that it shows all of this brokenness that we cause. But the fundamental message is there's nothing you could do. There's no pit deep enough that you could dig that would ever separate you truly and finally from God. And that's why I think the prodigal son is such a helpful interpretive lens to take to this, because the son goes out and he goes as far as he could go, and he comes back thinking that his father will not really want him back, so he's scheming about how he can convince his father to take him back, but instead the father meets him with open arms and embraces him and throws him a party.
And then his brother wants to kill him.
Yeah.
Still has family problems.
Yeah.
So Hosea wasn't blind?
No.
Because I always hear that song, Hosea, can you see? My goodness. By the dawn's early light. He could see you.
He can.
We are getting close to Independence Day, you can tell.
It is. Yes, it's coming up. So, all right. Well, God loves you and will never leave you. And next week, Amos.
Amos. Not Andy.
Thanks for listening to the Fig Tree Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, or sharing this podcast on social media so others can join us. We hope that you have a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Fig Tree Podcast.